Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. I was able to sit down and watch the self-destruction of Ultimate Warrior. I'm honestly making this video quite possibly 2 hours after I made the last one, doing like the Gemini style video, what I talked about, where I just basically showed off the DVD and gave my thoughts about what I remembered about it and what I thought was going to be it, and just basically what's on it, because I'll tell you the truth, there's a lot of people out there that have probably never seen this DVD. It came out close to 20 years ago, back in 2005. DVDs, quite honestly, aren't as popular as they once were. A lot of the newer fans, or even fans that are returning to wrestling, or just, firing up Peacock and watching what is on there. One of the reasons why I think the Ultimate Warrior came back at the time that he came back to WWE, I'm not quite sure that it was, the time that he felt, that bygones could be bygones between him, Vince, Triple H, Hulk Hogan, for the things that were said in the past. And one of the biggest problems that they had was this DVD and all the negative things that Bobby Heenan and Bruce Pritchard, Jim Ross, Triple H, basically anybody that was ever involved in the business with him came out negative. Honestly, watching this, I thought Hulk Hogan came out pretty positive of Ultimate Warrior. He did talk about wanting to break Warrior's leg at SummerSlam 1991, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But didn't really say anything over-the-top negative that I thought he would have said, that when Warrior came back at WrestleMania 30, they had to, shake hands. And the story was that Vince told Hulk Hogan that he had to stay away from the Ultimate Warrior. But Hogan was looking for Warrior, ran into him, didn't know what was going to happen, but thought that Warrior might run away. But they stood there, they shook hands, they said they were sorry. And then now Hogan can say that when Warrior passed away, that all was right in the world, just like he does with saying that him and Savage ran into each other at a doctor's office. And because of the story Hogan tells, I don't think many people believe that story. But I'll say honestly, watching this documentary, the one reason that came to my mind was that maybe Warrior came back to WWE at WrestleMania 30, was the fact that the network was being launched at that time. It had been launched a month before. Maybe Warrior wanted to make sure that this documentary didn't see the light of day on the WWE network at that time, which was basically put up that all of the documentaries that had been on DVD at the time, all of the pay-per-views, basically any special that WWE had ever run before was going to be there. And maybe that was one of the selling points, is that they could come back and they could rewrite their wrongs and they could make a documentary on the Ultimate Warrior that would suit both sides. They'd be able to tell the positive stories, they'd be able to tell the negative stories, and Warrior be able to give his side of the story of the controversy that would come from the way that he worked when he first came into what happened between him and Vince at SummerSlam 1991, when Warrior held him up for money. What happened when Warrior disappeared after coming back after WrestleMania 8. What happened after Warrior disappeared after the King of the Ring match with Jerry the King Lawler after he came back at WrestleMania 12. Why did Vince keep bringing him back? And why did Warrior keep breaking Vince's heart, I guess you can say. I think that's one of the reasons why the Always Believe documentary came out so fast. I believe it came out within 2 weeks after WrestleMania 30, after Ultimate Warrior passed away. They finished off this documentary that was basically the same thing as the network special within a few months of WrestleMania, honestly. So that I think that's honestly one of the reasons why when they sat down with Warrior and they said, we'll sell these t-shirts, we'll sell this kind of stuff on the documentary, sitting at the table in Titan Towers, I It's probably one of the things that they put out there and said they could rewrite the wrong by making another documentary, putting it out on the network and such like that. But they didn't spend a lot of time on this documentary really breaking down Ultimate Warrior getting into the wrestling business. They flew through it pretty fast about the birth of the Dingo Warrior, his coming up, being a tag team partner with Sting. You got to think in 2005, Sting was wrestling in TNA, so he couldn't really do an interview. At the same time, Warrior wasn't in WWE, so he couldn't do the interview. So they basically were having the story told through the likes of like Ted DiBiase, Jerry the King Lawler, and it was all sort of hearsay stuff about what was going on. That he basically went into Mid-South, which then he left because they said it was too physical and he didn't like the beating that his body was taking. He ended up going to Dallas, which then ended up putting him into Memphis, and that got him to the WWF, where he was put into feuds with Hercules Hernandez, which then led to feuds between him and Bobby Heenan, which then led to him against Andre the Giant, which led to the Rick Rude feud. He doesn't have a lot of feuds. In the last video, I talked about the fact that I could name probably 5 matches that I really remember him being in. Honestly, the answer is 6. And it's just, it's not a whole bunch. Possibly his best match can be debated against WrestleMania 6 or WrestleMania 7, whether if it's the match against Hogan for the WWF Championship or the match against Randy Savage, career versus career, which is crazy that he puts his career on the line at WrestleMania 7, and at the point WrestleMania 8, he's able to just straight up just come back to the company. As a kid, I didn't even realize he was gone. I'll tell you the truth, whether maybe he was off doing like a No Holds Barred movie like Hogan did when he disappeared, whether if he had an injury, but it never really was put out, we're letting you go, and he disappeared and he wasn't there. There was a lot of fallings out with him, between him and Vince, which came between money. Warrior wanted to be paid like he was Hulk Hogan. He was being put out there like he was the champion of the company, like he was the main guy. And he just wanted a fair shake. That if he was going to be the main event, he was going to be carrying the towns, because Hogan wasn't wrestling on all of them. He just wanted the same amount, which honestly, in my book, is fair. But Vince didn't want to start cutting more pieces of the pie, as big as he'd already given Hogan. But then again, Hogan had got him through like 6 of the biggest years in the company, from WrestleMania 1 all the way until WrestleMania 6, when he passed the torch to Ultimate Warrior. So SummerSlam, match made in heaven, match made in hell. They do business. Vince gives them the money, but then that he wants, but then immediately fires him as he comes through the thing, and just like, you're done, go home. Both of those guys trade lawsuits back and forth. It ends up, a year later, Hogan saying that he's gonna walk away. Vince is flipping out, like, what am I gonna do? He brings back the Ultimate Warrior. Ultimate Warrior, it honestly doesn't last long. I think this point is during the steroid trial. Warrior ended up getting busted with steroids. I think he failed a test. It was him and the British Bulldog, and they have to go. See you later. It's a couple of years goes around, and Warrior pops back up. He comes back into WrestleMania. He wrestles against Triple H. Comes back. He has a match against Jerry the King Lawler, and I think at this point, Warrior just starts no-showing houses. Maybe the business is down, money isn't what he thought it was going to be, and maybe it's just he hadn't been wrestling in a while, and it was hard on his body, and he couldn't do it night after night, being the star of the company. I'm not quite sure, but, this was sort of like the writing on the wall for Vince, that this isn't going to work, and he lets the guy go. That's of course when he sits out for another couple of years, and I think when Vince brought him back for that short run of WrestleMania, it's because WCW was kicking his ass and he needed anything he could throw against the wall to give him a little bit of a jump. We get to the point where WCW is losing their audience. I believe this was for this Halloween Havoc 98. They ended up bringing Warrior to WCW. Warrior, of course, had to go into the courts, change his name. His real name at this time of death was Ultimate Warrior. And, of course, his kids were named Warrior. His wife was named Dana Warrior. It's kind of crazy that you want to own your character so much. Which is one of the reasons why, like, DiBiase's against them, Ric Flair's against them. These guys couldn't believe that Warrior didn't understand that the wrestling business owns your name. That basically Vince promoted him. Vince was the reason he became what he is today. I don't know. Ric Flair is the same guy that, through a technicality, sent the WCW/NWA championship to Vince for his debut into WWF when he had a falling out with WCW back 1990, was that 1992? Somewhere in that, so it's basically kind of the same thing. It's just, I don't know, it's just kind of nuts. The WCW thing doesn't really last that long. Him and Hogan have a horrible match at Halloween Havoc. A lot of people say that, basically Hogan talked WCW into bringing him in just to get that win back. There was lots of talks about WCW bringing Yokozuna so he could get that win back. But just, if you look at Hulk Hogan's time in WCW, a lot of it was just trying to get ground, especially in those early days, by just beating the same guys that he had beat. Like, this worked before, let's see if it works again. Whether if it's the Shark, whether if it's the Macho Man. He wasn't really going out there and wrestling against new guys. It was just, give me the honky tonk man, give me this, that, and the other. People ate it up once, they'll eat it up again. I think Hogan knew that something was going to be cooking in the works with people remembering the past and that being a big deal, but he just was 10, 15 years too early before, people were going to start, wanting what their childhood was back in the day. I'll tell you the truth, if you've never seen The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, this is not a DVD you need to go really searching for. I couldn't find the documentary on YouTube or anything like that, but I tell you honestly, the AEW documentary is really, really good. That came out a couple of years ago. I'll tell you that the Beyond the Ring, I think that's what it's called. That was really good. That just sort of talks about him getting into WWF, sort of told through his ex-wife's perspective. Come on, man. We got 2 minutes here before I'm done. And the Always Believe. Really, really good. If you go on the WWE Network on Peacock, it's under a different name. I can't remember what it was, but it's basically the story of him coming back to WWE. I don't know. It's a whole lot of hubbub. I'm sure it made WWF a good deal of money around WrestleMania 21 back in 2005. But honestly, in today's world, it just doesn't hold up. And it's not what it should be, especially paying extra money for the collector's edition. Not really sure what these go for, but if you're looking for it, you can find it. They're not horribly hard to find. You're just got to pay for it because people know what they got. And there's, at the time you're going to be looking for it, not many people are going to be selling it. So you got to pay whatever they want. So peace out, everybody. Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Good old WWE video in 2023.